Hey there. Welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're taking a look at real horror, 5 films based on true terrors.
Okay.
An article that explores the real-life events behind some truly terrifying horror movies.
Right.
Buckle up because reality, as you'll soon see, can be way scarier than fiction.
Yeah, what's fascinating about these films is how they tap into our most primal fears.
Yeah.
We're not just talking about jump scares here.
Right.
These stories expose the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of everyday life,
Oh, yeah.
reminding us that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are human.
Yeah, that's a great point, and it's something that really hits home with our first film, The Girl Next Door. I
Yeah.
mean, the idea that unimaginable cruelty could unfold in a seemingly normal suburban setting is just bone-chilling. This film, is based on the Sylvia Likens case.
Right, and this case from 1965 is truly disturbing. Sylvia Likens, a teenager entrusted to the care of Gertrude Banaszewski. Banaszewski was subjected to months of horrific abuse by Banaszewski and, shockingly, a group of neighborhood children.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to comprehend the level of brutality Sylvia endured. The article details the physical assaults, the psychological torment, even the fact that she was forced to consume her own waste.
Ugh, that's awful.
It's heartbreaking, and it raises so many questions about how something like this could happen.
And that's where it gets really interesting from a psychological perspective. Think about the bystander effect, this phenomenon where individuals are less likely to intervene in an emergency situation when other people are present.
Okay.
It's a chilling example of how diffusion of responsibility can lead to inaction, even in the face of horrific abuse.
So you're saying that the presence of those other children might have actually prevented any one individual from stepping in to help Sylvia. That's a terrifying thought, and it makes you wonder how many of us might fall victim to the bystander effect without even realizing it.
Absolutely. And this case underscores the importance of recognizing the signs of abuse and understanding the psychological factors that can contribute to such tragedies.
Right.
We all have a responsibility to be vigilant and to speak up when we see something wrong.
You're right, because intervening in a situation like that could literally mean saving a life. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes being a good neighbor means being willing to step outside of our comfort zones and take action.
Precisely. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's move on to The Strangers, a film that explores a different kind of horror. The fear of the unknown and the unsettling possibility of random violence.
Okay, this one definitely plays on some deep-seated anxieties, the idea of being targeted in your own home by strangers for no apparent reason. It's a nightmare scenario, and the film draws inspiration from real-life cases like the Manson family murders and the still unsolved Ketty Cabin murders.
Exactly. These cases and the film itself highlight the terrifying nature of motiveless violence. When there's no clear reason, no discernible pattern, it feels like anyone could be a target.
Right.
It shatters our sense of security and order, leaving us feeling incredibly vulnerable.
And think about how that fear of the unknown plays into our psychology. Our minds tend to fill in the blanks when we're faced with uncertainty. And often those imagined scenarios are far more terrifying than reality.
You're absolutely right. It's the what if that keeps us up at night. And in cases like the Kitty Cabin murders, where the killers were never caught, that uncertainty lingers,
Yeah.
feeding our anxieties
Yeah.
and amplifying our sense of vulnerability.
The article mentions that the Ketty Cabin case remains unsolved to this day. Knowing that those responsible were never brought to justice adds another layer of unease to the whole story. It's like a real-life horror movie with no resolution.
It certainly underscores the fact that despite our best efforts to secure our homes and create a sense of safety, there's always an element of the unknown that we can't fully control. And it's that unpredictability, that lack of control that can be so profoundly unsettling.
So how do we reconcile that? Do we just live in a constant state of fear, always looking over our shoulders, or is there a way to manage that anxiety without letting it consume us?
That's a great question, and it's something I think we all grapple with. While it's essential to be aware of our surroundings and take reasonable precautions, it's equally important to remember that statistically the chances of becoming a victim of random violence are relatively low.
Okay, so it's about finding a balance between being cautious and not letting fear dictate our lives. And I guess it also highlights the importance of trusting our instincts. If something feels off, it's probably better to err on the side of caution.
Exactly. It's about being mindful without becoming paranoid. Now, let's delve into a different kind of fear, one that touches on the realm of the paranormal. The Amityville Horror takes us into the world of alleged hauntings and the power of suggestion.
Oh, yeah. This one is a classic. The story of the Lutz family and their short-lived stay in that infamous Amityville house is just packed with creepy details. I mean, a year before the Lutz family moved in, Ronald DeFeo Jr. murdered his entire family in that house. All 6 members were found face down in their beds with no signs of struggle. It immediately fueled speculation about something sinister at play.
Right, and the positioning of the bodies led to theories that they might have been paralyzed by some unknown force before being killed.
Oh, wow.
Then, of course, you have the Lutz family's claims of demonic eyes, disembodied voices, and even physical attacks by unseen entities. It's a story that plays on our deep-seated fears of the supernatural and the places where the veil between our world and the other side might be thin.
And you can't forget the priest who tried to bless the house and was supposedly met with a disembodied voice yelling, "Get out!" He even claimed to have developed mysterious blisters afterward.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
This is where the power of suggestion comes in. The Amityville house was already steeped in tragedy and notoriety. That history created a fertile ground for fear and imagination to run wild. It's possible that the Lutz family, already on edge after moving into a house with such a dark past, were subconsciously influenced by the stories surrounding the DeFeo murders,
Yeah.
leading them to interpret ordinary events as supernatural occurrences.
That makes sense. And the media frenzy surrounding the case probably didn't help either. The more people talked about the haunting, the more the Lutz family's beliefs might have been reinforced. It's like a feedback loop of fear and suggestion.
Exactly. It's a classic example of how our perceptions can shape our experiences, especially in a place with such a charged history. But of course, there are also those who believe the Lutz family fabricated their story for fame and profit.
Right. It becomes a question of what's real and what's imagined. And the article even mentions a ghostly photo allegedly captured by paranormal investigators. It shows what appears to be a young boy believed to be one of the murdered DeFeo children.
Oh, wow.
It's enough to make you wonder, could there be some truth to the haunting claims?
It's that lingering question that keeps us fascinated by these stories, whether you believe in ghosts or not. There's something undeniably powerful about the idea of places holding on to the energy of past events, especially traumatic ones.
It's like those places become vessels for our collective fears and anxieties. And speaking of anxieties, let's shift gears and talk about Veronica, a film based on a case that really blurs the lines between the psychological and the supernatural.
Yeah, this film draws from what is said to be Spain's only officially documented paranormal case, the 1991 death of Estefania Gutierrez. Lázaro Estefania was a teenager who, after using a Ouija board, allegedly became possessed and experienced a series of terrifying events leading up to her death.
Okay, I have to admit, Ouija boards have always creeped me out. There's something about that whole idea of trying to communicate with spirits that just seems like asking for trouble, but this case goes way beyond creepy game. The article says that Estefania started having seizures, hallucinations, and she even became violent. Her parents reported seeing shadowy photos, hearing strange noises, and objects moving on their own. It's like something straight out of a horror movie. But the fact that it's officially documented by the Spanish authorities adds this whole other layer of intrigue.
It does, and it makes you question, is there something truly supernatural at play here? Or is there a scientific explanation that we just don't fully understand? Could these experiences have been triggered by a psychological break?
A psychological break? What does that actually mean?
Well, psychological break, also known as a mental breakdown, is essentially a period of intense mental distress where someone is unable to cope with stress or trauma, leading to significant changes in their behavior, thoughts, and emotions. It can manifest in many ways, including hallucinations, delusions, paranoia, and even physical symptoms like seizures.
So you're saying that the traumatic experience of the Ouija board session, coupled with whatever else was going on in Estefania's life, could have triggered this psychological break, and that could explain the things she was seeing and experiencing.
It's certainly a possibility. The human mind is incredibly complex and powerful, and we're still learning about the ways trauma can affect us both physically and mentally. But the fact that police documented unexplained phenomena in the Lázaro household is pretty compelling.
Right. It's not just anecdotal evidence. We're talking about official reports. It makes you wonder, what if there's more to the Ouija board than just a game? What if it actually acts as a conduit opening door to something we don't fully understand?
That's a question that's been debated for decades. Some believe the Ouija board can facilitate communication with spirits, while others believe it's more of a psychological tool, tapping into our subconscious thoughts, fears, and desires.
So it could be that the participants are unconsciously moving the planchette themselves, driven by their own expectations and beliefs. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way.
Exactly. Our beliefs and expectations have a powerful influence on our perceptions and experiences. If you believe you're going to contact spirits, you're more likely to interpret any unusual event as evidence of the supernatural.
This whole case just leaves me with so many questions, and to think it all ended with Estefania's unexplained death in a hospital, it's a stark reminder that sometimes the things we can't explain can have very real and devastating consequences.
It does make you wonder about the power of belief, the fragility of the human mind, and the thin line that often separates the rationale from the unknown.
Okay, well, let's move on to our final film, The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which tackles another controversial topic, demonic possession. This film is inspired by the real-life exorcism of Anneliese Michel, a German woman who exhibited extreme and disturbing behaviors attributed to demonic possession.
This case is one of the most well-documented cases of alleged demonic possession. There were recordings of over 67 exorcism sessions, and some believe these recordings capture the actual voices of demons speaking through Anneliese.
Whoa, that's intense. The article describes how she spoke in multiple voices, claiming to be possessed by Lucifer Judas and other demonic entities. She would contort her body in unnatural ways, inflict self-harm, and go through periods of starvation and intense screaming. It sounds absolutely terrifying.
It's certainly a case that challenges our understanding of the human mind and the nature of reality. Was Anneliese truly possessed by demonic forces, or was she suffering from an undiagnosed mental illness?
I mean, from a psychological standpoint, there are conditions like dissociative identity disorder, formerly known as multiple personality disorder, that could potentially explain the different voices and personalities, and the self-harm and extreme behaviors could be linked to other mental health conditions. But then there's that whole other side of it, the possibility that something truly supernatural was happening.
And that's the heart of the debate surrounding this case. The film itself presents both sides of the argument, leaving the audience to grapple with the ambiguity and draw their own conclusions.
It's hard to wrap your head around, especially when you consider the extreme nature of the events. Annalise died from malnutrition and dehydration while under the care of priests who believed they were battling demonic forces. It raises serious ethical questions about the role of religious beliefs in healthcare and the potential for harm when mental illness goes untreated.
Absolutely. Whether you believe in demonic possession or mental illness, this case highlights the importance of seeking appropriate medical and psychological care when dealing with extreme or unusual behaviors. It's a tragic story that underscores the need for compassion, understanding, and a balanced approach to addressing the complexities of the human experience.
It's a lot to process. We've gone from the horrific abuse of Sylvia Lakins to the unexplained events surrounding Estefania Gutierrez Lazaro, and now this intense case of alleged demonic possession. It's been a journey through the dark side of human nature and the unsettling mysteries that continue to baffle us. It really makes you think about the limits of our understanding and the different ways people interpret the world around them. We've explored cases where the lines between reality, belief, and fear become incredibly blurred. It's fascinating and terrifying all at the same time.
What I find particularly interesting is how each of these films and the real life stories they're based on tap into a different facet of horror. We have The Girl Next Door, which exposes the potential for evil to exist within seemingly ordinary people right in our own neighborhood.
Right.
Then there's The Strangers, which preys on our fear of the unknown and the unsettling possibility of random violence.
And then we move into the realm of the paranormal and the supernatural with the Amityville Horror and Veronica. Those cases really make you question what's possible and how much of what we experience is influenced by our own beliefs and expectations.
Yeah, it's like each film holds up a mirror to our deepest fears and anxieties,
Yeah.
forcing us to confront the things that make us feel vulnerable and uncertain. And as we've discussed, sometimes those fears are rooted in very real dangers, while other times they stem from the unknown and the things we can't fully explain.
It's that sense of the unknown, that lingering ambiguity that really sticks with you after watching these films and learning about the true stories behind them. It's like a puzzle with missing pieces, and our minds can't help but try to fill in the gaps.
And that's where critical thinking comes in. It's so important to approach these stories with a discerning eye, to consider different perspectives, and to be wary of jumping to conclusions. Just because something is presented as true doesn't necessarily mean it's accurate or complete.
You're so right. We have to be willing to question what we see and hear, to look for evidence, and to be open to the possibility that there might be more to the story than meets the eye. It's like being a detective piecing together clues and trying to separate fact from fiction.
And sometimes even after examining all the evidence, we're still left with unanswered questions. That's the nature of these mysteries. They challenge us to think critically, to grapple with uncertainty, and to acknowledge the limits of our own understanding.
So where do we go from here? What can we take away from these unsettling stories and the conversations we've had about them?
Well, for one, I think it reinforces the importance of being aware of our surroundings and taking reasonable precautions to protect ourselves. But it also highlights the need to be mindful of our own biases and assumptions.
Right.
How much of what we believe is based on evidence, and how much is shaped by our fears or our cultural conditioning or the stories we've been told.
That's a great question. It makes you think about how easily we can be swayed by sensationalized stories or influenced by the opinions of others. It's a reminder to always seek out multiple perspectives and to be willing to challenge our own beliefs.
Exactly. And I think it also underscores the importance of empathy and compassion.
Oh, yeah.
The cases we've discussed involve real people who experienced unimaginable trauma and suffering. It's crucial to remember that even in the most horrific or unbelievable stories, there are human lives at stake.
Absolutely. You've made some excellent points. This deep dive has been a real eye-opener, exploring the dark side of humanity and the ways in which reality can often surpass fiction in terms of sheer terror and strangeness. It's been fascinating, unsettling, and definitely thought-provoking.
And as we wrap up this exploration of real-life horror, I'd leave you with this thought we've explored: cases where the lines between reality, belief, and fear become blurred. It makes you wonder what that tells us about the human mind and our innate need to make sense of the unexplainable, even when it terrifies us. Perhaps the most unsettling truth of all is that the scariest monsters might not be the ones hiding under our beds or lurking in the shadows, but the ones that reside within ourselves. Our own capacity for cruelty, our susceptibility to fear, and our tendency to project our anxieties onto the world around us.
That's a chilling thought to end on, but it's a powerful reminder to keep those critical thinking skills sharp and to never stop questioning the world around us. Who knows what other real life horrors are waiting to be uncovered? Maybe some of those stories are closer than we think. If you have any real life horror stories you'd like to share, we'd love to hear them. You can reach out to us on our website or social media. Until then, sleep tight. And remember, sometimes reality is the scariest story of all.